Hi guys, I'm Kasha. Welcome to the channel and welcome as always to our coffee times to discuss books and horror. And today I bring you my wrap up for the month of March.
It's coffee time.
So in the month of March, I had a TBR pile of a total of 8 books and I was able to read 6. So at the end of the day, I am quite happy. And most of the things that I read, I was interested in. So I'm here to let you guys know what I thought of all those books. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We like to rate here our books with coffee mugs because it's appropriate considering my slight addiction to caffeine. And we also like to start with the lowest rating to the highest, so we always end up on a positive note. Let's start with I Will Always Find You. There is no secret here that the moment I read Let the Right One In, I was obsessed with the story. It quickly became one of my favorite vampire books because of how unique it was. And I did watch the movie before I read the book, and I was always in love with the original movie as well. So I feel like, you know, I came full circle also reading and enjoying the book so much. And I wanted to read more things by the author, so I picked up a couple other of his books, one of them being I Will Always Find You. What I didn't know when I picked up this book is that the novel is not actually all fiction. It is part fiction and part reality, because we do follow a little bit the author's own life, like his own past, and he merges that with a very weird horror story. So we follow him when he's 19 and he moves to an apartment, and he is starting off his career as a magician, which I thought was quite interesting. I really loved the bits when he talked about magic and magic tricks and stuff like that. And he soon realizes that in the apartment building where he just moved in, there is something really weird in the laundry room, something dark, some sort of darkness, some sort of like black goo that nobody seems to know what it's doing there, and things escalate as you keep reading the book. But as the story went on and on, I started to feel that the book was dragging for me. By the middle point, I was already quite out of the story and I found myself struggling to finish the book. I think it's just, this was not the type of horror for me. You know, it felt to me when I read a book like weird fiction and it just doesn't vibe with me, I feel like that's the experience that I had with this book. But I do still enjoy the author's way of telling stories, and I do want to pick up more things by the author, so this is not going to be my last. It's just unfortunately a book that was not for me, but I'm sure there are others by the author that I will enjoy. Will anything top Let the Right One In for me? Probably not, but I would still like to give the author another chance. And now we go to the next book, and with the next book I had a very similar experience. So when I read The Last House on Needless Street, I fell in love with the book because of how unique the writing was, how intricate the psychological horror was in the book, and how unexpected everything was, especially when you get to the end. And it is a book that had me really intrigued because people in the booktube community didn't even know how to pitch the book without spoiling it. And a lot of people just were saying, just go into it without knowing anything at all. And I totally agree because it was just such a magic experience. So I was really excited to read something else by Catriona Ward. So I ended up picking up Sundial. And I gotta tell you, I feel like this was such a good psychological horror story, but in a way it didn't blow me away and it didn't captivate me as much as The Last House on Needless Street did. Even though I think this is a great messed up horror story, and there is a lot of good things in it, I did find myself struggling a little bit more to get through it and get to the end, to the good parts. This time we follow Rob, a woman that lives with her husband and her 2 children, and one of her kids starts to exhibit some weird behavior, so Rob gets worried and decides to take her on a trip with her, hoping that the trip is going to help. But Rob also is dealing with a lot herself, because there is many things from her past that she still has not come to terms with, a lot of trauma that is a little bit unresolved on her end. So she decides to go back to her childhood home with her daughter to see if they can go through everything together there, connect, and kind of go through all of the trauma and recover. But the more we learn about the background story about Rob when she was a kid and all of that, the more messed up the story starts to become. And similar to The Last House on Needless Street, nothing is exactly what it seems. As I said, sadly this did not captivate me as much as the other one did, but I still really love the writing. The writing is impeccable. I love the writing. I love how messed up the story turned. I really enjoyed the third act of the book. I was there for it. I just feel like it perhaps was not as engaging for me as the other one was, but I'm still really happy with this. I think everybody that loves psychological horror should give it a chance, and I'm definitely gonna be picking up more things by the author for sure. Moving on to a YA book, and that is The Face on the Milk Carton by Caroline B. Cooney. And this is a book that I've always wanted to read. It always has intrigued me. The title, the cover, I was always really interested in picking it up, and I have to say it delivered. It is super engaging. It's not exactly horror, it's more of a mystery thriller, but I just kept reading and I couldn't put it down. It's about this girl that is at school and it's lunchtime, so everybody gets, you know, their trays with their food and their milk. She is lactose intolerant, so she doesn't drink milk at school, but her friends do. And she notices in the milk carton that there is an ad for a missing person, and she double checks because she is a little bit confused, because that's her face on the milk carton. That is her at age 3. And she starts to question her whole life. Is it really her? Could she be confused? Are her parents her real parents? Was she kidnapped as a child? So she is kind of struggling to decide what to do next. Should she tell her parents? Should she try to investigate and see what she can find out? So it was a really cool, fast-paced thriller. And there is a sequel, because this book does end up kind of in a cliffhanger, so I'm really excited to pick up the second book. And this one was just so much fun. So if you're looking for just a fun mystery thriller, something that is a quick read if you're in reading slump, I think this one is gonna be perfect. Next we have this book, Killed by Ravenna Guron, and I'm not gonna go into too much detail here because I am gonna upload a complete spoiler-free review of the book, since this one came out in 2023 and it was a great whodunit mystery thriller. We follow Jess. She is at an elite school, but she only got in thanks to a scholarship, so she always has felt a little bit out of place because everybody else is kind of like posh and with rich parents and kind of, you know, privileged children, and then there's Jess who doesn't have all of those advantages, so she feels she has to try a lot harder to get good grades, to behave, in order to keep her scholarship and keep going to this great school. But then one day somebody gets killed. A body appears murdered in the woods, and Jess is kind of on the focal point, and she is going to try to find out who killed this person. She's going to make a list of suspects. She's really gonna dig deeper there into the mystery, trying to figure out who had a motive, who could have been at the right time for the murder to happen. And it was just so much fun and fast-paced. I really enjoyed it, and something that I really did like about this book is the unique voice that Jess has, and her voice really invites the reader to investigate with her. She engages you, she tries to make you figure out who could have done it, and it's a great whodunit mystery thriller. There is a lot of emphasis also put on some love interest, love relationships and stuff like that, so it depends if you like that or not. but there are some, you know, comments about relationships and cheating and love, and there's romance and stuff like that. I mean, it's not the majority of the book, but it's there, so I just wanted to mention it because I know some people don't really like that in their thrillers or horror. But all in all, I had a blast with this book, and definitely was a great debut. Next we have Someone Is Watching You by Tess James Mackey. So I am still on this quest to read as many YA thrillers and horrors as I can, and this is another 2023 release. This also came out in January, and it was another fantastic read. Honestly, this was great. I really liked it. I felt it was really unique and entertaining, and apart from the horror and the moments full of tension, it also offered really good messages. So in this story we follow Nia. She wants to impress her boyfriend and her boyfriend's friends, and she agrees to a dare. The dare is to go into an abandoned prison and send them pictures, you know, just to show that she was there. And she decides to do it. So Nia goes into this abandoned prison, and her sister Kayla follows her, and as they are trying to investigate through the rooms, at some point Nia realizes that Kayla is missing. So now Nia is worried that she's not gonna find her sister. She's also trying to find a way out, and there's a lot of gruesome discoveries that she's making in this abandoned prison, in the abandoned cells. This was quite a unique story. It was really entertaining, it was intriguing, it was creepy, there was a lot of tension. You didn't really know what was going to happen next, so you wanted just to keep reading to figure out what was going to happen next. There's a couple of interesting twists at the end, and I just had such a good time with this one as well. And apart from succeeding at being a chilling thriller, it also brought us many good messages that were discussed, like toxic friendships. And last but definitely not least, I read One Girl in All the World by Kendara Blake. This is book 2 after In Every Generation, and it is a book based on the Buffy universe, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And what I really loved about the series so far is that it manages to introduce a bunch of new characters into the mix, but it keeps and respects the old characters that we know from the show. So we have our OG characters that now some of them have children, and I love the balance that the author manages between respecting the TV show and creating something a little bit new. In the first book, we discover that there is now a new Slayer. After the Slayers have been attacked at a sort of like Slayer convention, now they're looking for a new Slayer, and that is Willow's daughter. So it's going to be the first Slayer that it is also a witch. Her name is Frankie, and together with her friends that we will get to know as the Scooby Gang, have to figure out, you know, how to become a Slayer, how to fight, how to defeat monsters, obviously how to defeat vampires. And the first book was a little bit more focused on vampires. The second book introduces other type of monsters. I feel like I enjoyed book 2 more than I did book 1, perhaps because that new characters were already established for me in book 2, and I get to see a lot of the OG characters in this book as well, especially Spike, and the way he talks in this book I was completely in love with. And in this one we get introduced to a bunch of different monsters because the Hellmouth has reopened on Sundial. That is basically the pitch for book 2, and that gave the author a lot of, you know, opportunity to play with different types of monsters and not just vampires. So I feel like that is what actually made it so much more entertaining for me. I think if you've never seen the show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, first of all you should because it's great, and I still think that it is good today. If you watch it, I think it still holds up. And secondly, I don't think it's going to impact your reading that much. Of course, there's a lot of Easter eggs and references to the show that you might miss, but I think the author still managed to create her own universe inside of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So I think new readers are still gonna be able to really enjoy it as a new series. And if you do love Buffy, you must pick up this series because it's so nostalgic and it's so great to read in a universe where we are back in Sunnydale and there's Hellmouth and there's vampires and there's Spike and there's Willow. It's just so nostalgic to me. I think anybody that has loved the show needs to read this series. And also if you love just books about the supernatural, you know, the classic vampires and werewolves and slayers and hunters, all of those things, you're gonna love this series as well. I'm really excited for the next book. I have to wait a little long now because this one came out this year, but I just cannot wait to keep following Frankie and see how things end. Alright guys, so that is everything that I managed to read in the month of March. Let me know down below what have you read, what has been like the best book you read in the month of March. Let's talk about it in the comments down below. Thank you guys as always so much for watching, and I hope to see you all as always in our next coffee time. Bye!